All right, here we go. What's going on, everyone? XLaw804 here. I got the PS5 on launch day and I was trying to get down to 20 frames. Nonetheless, it was a headache. So I wanted to put together a video just explaining where all of my shortcomings were and what you need to avoid when you get a PS5 and you want to get the 120 frames, or if you already have it and you're trying to figure out why you can't get the 120 frames. So this will be super informal. We're all chilling here. We're all family. We're all friends. This will be informative though. I'm not going to joke around. I'm going to give you straight facts. Maybe not straight facts, but I'm going to give you what I learned, and hopefully this will help you get through the issue way faster than I did. So a couple of things to note: I am not an expert. Please don't ask me for monitor recommendations. I will let you know what I got, and you can kind of budget above it or below it, or figure out what features you need and don't need, and go from there. Excuse me. So before I start talking about it, I want to let you know up front, I'm going to explain a few things to you. Number one is what kind of monitor you need, because if you've been playing on the same monitor for like 5 or 7 years, you're going to need a new monitor. I'm also going to demo the settings, and then there's going to be a third section for my streamers and content creators, because it's super important that you stay for that section or fast forward to it, because if you get a PS5, there are some things you need to know about Elgato if that's what you're using in order to get 120 frames. And there's another thing about optical headsets that I'll also lump into that section as well. All right. So starting off with the first thing, the monitor. So one of the biggest headaches I had was that I didn't know that I needed a new monitor when I got the PS5. And on top of that, I kept on seeing everywhere that the PS5 was HDMI 2.1. That's all I kept seeing. I'm like, HDMI 2.1, what is that? What is that? So I started looking for a monitor because I wanted to get the 120 frames. I wanted to play Call of Duty. So I started doing all this research trying to figure out, where can I find an HDMI 2.1 monitor? Well, come to find out, HDMI 2.1 is super recent, and there's not a lot of monitors out there right now that exist that support HDMI 2.1. And let me take a step back. There's two terms I'm going to be using a ton. One is Hertz, HZ, and the other is frames per second. They mean the exact same thing. Or they're usually referenced the same way. They are slightly different. Hertz is more of a frequency. Frames per second is literally what you see on screen, but for the most part, they're interchangeable. If you want to fight in the comment section over that, you're more than welcome to. I really don't care. All right, so I spent all this time looking for an HDMI 2.1 monitor, and I come to find out, like I said, they're newer to the market. They're super expensive, usually upward of like $400 or $500. So if you just bought a PS5 for $500, do you really want to spend another $500 to get 2.1? Like that kind of sucks. And I didn't want to do that. So what I figured out was that 2.1 is, here it is, backwards compatible, meaning that you can use HDMI 2.0, which is, more common right now and is cheaper to find, faster to get your hands on too. So that's what I ended up doing. I went with the HDMI 2.0 monitor. Now, originally, when I started doing my research, I thought that I could just skate by with an Omen monitor. Not Omen specifically, but just I thought any brand new monitor would work. And it does not. Make sure my address isn't over here. Okay, it's not. So what ended up happening was I bought this monitor thinking, okay, as long as I get a brand new monitor, I should be covered. That is not the case at all. When you go to buy a monitor, it is mega, and I cannot stress this enough, it is mega important that you check for this HDMI. Let me zoom in so you guys can see it. This HDMI HDMI 1.4. If your monitor is HDMI 1.4 only, then you cannot get 120 hertz on PS5. Maybe, I don't even know about Xbox. I just know for PS5 specifically that HDMI 1.4 will not work. It is super important that you check for this. It is super important that you go down to like the comment section on, like I use Amazon, I'm sure most people do. Type in like 120 hertz or type in like not 100, HDMI 2.0, right? And then go down here. And so this person says it supports HE. This is not true. This is a year old as well. So this is not true. It does not support 144 over HDMI because this is 1.4. I tried it. It did not work. All right. So make sure you check the comment section. Make sure people confirm. I tried this specific monitor. It did not work. Direct connection PS5 to my monitor. HDMI 1.4 does not work. Okay. Moving on. And if there's something I missed on that, let me know, but that was my experience. All right. So HDMI 2.0. Now, what is HDMI 2.0? So I already explained that 2.1, or maybe I didn't. 2.1 is 4K at 120 hertz or frames per second. 2.0 is half of that. So HDMI 2.0 is 4K at 60 hertz or frames per second, and you really want that 120. Some games don't go up to 120. Like here's a list of PS5 games. Most of the time, it's one or the other. Most of the time, if I zoom in, most of the time it will be 4K at 60, or it'll be 4K 60. But you can also do 120, but lower resolution. You usually can't get both at the same time, so I would not pursue HDMI 2.1 extremely heavy. Most games out there is going to be one or the other, 4K, 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 and then this one supports 120 at native 4K. I'm not 100% sure about that. That might be a one-off. Both games are 4K 60 or at a lower resolution and 120. See what I'm saying? It's not like you're going to get both. So you should kind of pick, do you want 4K at 60 for your single player games, or do you want 120 frames per second at a lower resolution for your shooting games? If you're Call of Duty head, racing head, that 120 is going to be more enticing. Down the road, you'll have a monitor that can flip back and forth between both, but you have to decide on which one you want. So moving on, let me see. Oh, make sure you test your USB cables, because I did. Once I got my HDMI, or once I got my monitor that supported HDMI 2.0, what ended up happening was I had a bad USB cable, and I plugged it in straight from the monitor to the PS5, and it would not jump to 120. I then ended up switching out the cable, and I was able to get the 120 hertz. So make sure you check your cables. So now that we got that figured out, let me show you my monitor. So I was going into the comment sections. I was checking for 2.0 monitors. I specifically was looking for people that said, yes, this is 2.0, because some people would say, oh, the manufacturer website says it's 2.0 or whatever. And I'm like, well, I need for someone who actually have it. I don't want to know what the manufacturer says. They could be wrong, So I saw a bunch of stuff like that. But this particular monitor was recommended by a friend. I pulled it up on Amazon. A lot of people on Amazon confirmed it was 2.0. It even said it on the website. Some manufacturers don't even say that the monitor is 2.0. They all say like 1.4, or they just don't specify, and you go, I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not going to buy this. But this one specifically said 2.0. I'm trying to find it really quick for you. Yeah, 2.0. 2.0. Yeah, this is 384. I got it on sale for 300. It's usually 500, I think, is what I saw. Yeah, 500, but I got it for 300. It looks like the price went up a little bit, whatever. It has a bunch of features that I needed. Of course, you don't need to get this, but the 2.0 is the most important part, but there were several other things that were very enticing that made me get the monitor. And it's been working great. I've had it for like 2-3 weeks now. It's been fantastic. So 2.0 monitor, when you go on Amazon, that's what you want to look for, HDMI 2.0. I could not get it to work with 144. Let me take a quick pause here. I need to get something to drink. All right, guys, so I wanted to circle back really quick. I took a sip of my drink. It was great if you wanted to know. So like it says right here, some of the monitors at 144 hertz do support it, but not all of them. And that's what was my experience. It would be better just to go ahead and just get a 2.0 monitor. You can take your chance, but like I might need to zoom in. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. So here it is right here. Yes, HDMI 1.4, blah, blah, blah. I'll let you pause the video and read it, but it's not guaranteed. 2.0 is guaranteed to work. So you can do your research on that if you want to, but 1.4 HDMI, I had 2 different monitors that were HDMI 1.4 and neither worked. 2.0 for sure got me my 120. All right, moving on. If you have a monitor that's 2.0, make sure that when you're hooking it up, turn off FreeSync. I turned on FreeSync to test it on this monitor, and it did keep the 120 hertz with FreeSync on, but for some people it may not work, so you may need to turn off FreeSync or G-Sync. Both can possibly work, so keep an eye on that. Sorry, I'm watching something over here in the top right corner of my screen. All right, So now that we talked about whether or not you need 2.1, which just to summarize, you do not need 2.1 to get 120. You can get 120 at 2.0 and some 1.4 hertz monitors. I'll let the people in the comment section tell me that, because I could not get that on the 2 different monitors I tried. And turn off FreeSync and check your USB cables. Okay. Moving to the next thing. All right, sorry, I had to make a quick skip right there. I was watching something on Discord. It's not important. All right, so time to demo the settings, right? So we're getting 2.0 monitor did the trick for me, and making sure your USB cables are up to date. All right, so one thing about PS5 that is extremely misleading is that you'll plug up your cord to, you'll plug up the PS5 to your monitor, and you go to check the settings, and it says, I gotta switch mine because I'm looking at my Streamlabs right now, which is kind of confusing. Or I'm looking at it's not important. All right, so now I have my PS5 pulled up and I'm watching. So what happens is it says that you're at 120, excuse me, you're at, where's my mouse? There it is. It says that you're at 60 hertz, even though you know for a fact that you have an HDMI 2.0 monitor and that your PS5, and all that is turned on. So what ends up happening here is it doesn't update until you get on the game. And two, there's one more thing. Now, not every game supports 120, to be clear. So what you do is you come down here. Some people have mentioned this, and this does help. Put your PS5 in performance mode. You can leave it to game default, and if a developer has programmed it to be the performance mode, then you will get the 120. But if you could just set it to this, and you can flip flop between these two, however you want to do it. But I know for a fact, if you're not getting it, put it on performance mode, and then from there, when you play, you should get the 120. All right, so now we got that out the way. Just gonna go back one more time and show you guys. Where's it at? Screen and video output, blah blah. All right, 60. All right. So here's the next part. So even though you have everything, you're still not getting 120. What I learned is that can I go to my games? Okay, here you go. So two things. One, you need to make sure you're on the PS5 version of said game, because I was on PS4 at one point and it doesn't have a setting on the PS4 version. So once you make sure you're on 5, go ahead and open it. Your screen, at least mine's, it does this thing where it flickers, like you just saw, because it's changing from 60 to 120. And I had the audio muted, don't worry about that. All right, so I'm just gonna go into the settings really quick and show you. And I'm sure this will be the case for multiple games where there's gonna be special settings you need to enable. Maybe not, maybe because this game has both PS4 and PS5, I don't know. All right, so 120 hertz right there, refresh rate is enabled. Why is it so bright right there? It's kind of weird, huh? It's like it's cutting it off too right there. It's kind of freaky. All right, and then ray tracing for this particular game needs to be disabled. All right, so going back to PlayStation here, home, settings, and if we go back to screen and video, it now says 120 hertz. So it's important to know that you need to go into the game, turn on whatever settings you need to turn on, and then it should kick up to the 120. If you just turn your PS5 on and come straight to the screen, it will not work. Or it'll stay at 60, because there's no reason to be at 120 frames if you're not playing anything that warrants it. You're just in extra performance for no reason. All right, so now if I go back, you will see screen and video. You will now see that I'm back at 60 hertz because I'm no longer on the game. So that's how that works. All right, so that's pretty much it. Again, there's only 2 games right now on PS5. Rocket League and Call of Duty, as far as I know, are the only 2 games that support 120 hertz, aka frames per second. So that's all you have to do, is just start the game up and then go check the settings. But if you check the settings before you start, no matter what you do, you can't get it to go up to 120. And that's pretty much it for the video. So the key takeaways, I'm going to say HDMI 2.0, make sure your FreeSync's turned off, USB cables. I would not play with HDMI 1.4. That's just from my experience, but you have the info. You can do what you want with it. The second thing is make sure you go into the game first and then check the PS5 settings. And that's that. That's how you get the 120 frames on PS5. Performance mode, And then go into the game. And then as you saw how my screen went to a no signal, my screen went black over here as well. And it kicked up to 120. And then I was able to, get 120. Okay, so you guys have a good one. Now for my streamers, my content creators, if you're using Elgato, it is super important. And I'm going to flip back here to the Elgato website. It is super important to know, and I got to zoom in, that these capture cards do not support 120 hertz, because this sucked, because I was able to, once I had the monitor and I plugged in my Elgato, it got stuck at 60, and I was trying to figure out if it was my USB cables. I'm like, what's going on? Because you have to run HDMI cable into the Elgato and then run that up to the monitor. So I was checking all my cables to make sure the USBs and everything were good, and not USB, the HDMIs, and they were not. Or they were good, because I took each one and I plugged it up to a monitor and plugged it into PS5. Each time I got 120. And then that's when I was like, okay, it's the Elgato. So I did some research and I figured that out before I came to the website. And I came to find out, because I had the HD60 Pro. As of right now, I have upgraded to the 4K Mark II right here. This is the one I upgraded to, and this does give me 120. Now I will say the stream or the video will be capped at 60, but at least I can play at 120 comfortably on my monitor while the stream gets to 60. You don't really need to see the 120 on the stream. It would help, it would be nice, but for the time being, this is the best that they have. I might be able to get 120 on stream. I'm not 100% sure. It says it, but I gotta play and figure it out. I have it set to 120, but when I compare my Streamlabs to Elgato, you can see a delay. I think I might be able to show you guys really fast. Okay, so I was trying to get a side-by-side of what you see in Streamlabs versus what you see in the 4K software, which is what you use for the Mark 4K Pro. It's a little bit different than Elgato Game Capture, but I wasn't able to figure out, because the issue is that every time you try to zoom in on Streamlabs, of course, you're looking at Streamlabs inside of Streamlabs, and it's infinite window. But there is about maybe a half a second delay between the 4K and your screen, which isn't bad, but there is a small delay. And I gotta be honest with you, I have been trying to figure this out for so long, I almost forgot the issue with that. Okay, anyway, going back to the streamer part here, is just that the 4K HD Pro, you cannot get 120 pass through. So like how you saw I had 120, I was able to show you 120 on my screen while I'm recording and streaming, which I'm not streaming, but if I was, you would be able to see it, is because I'm using the 4K. And then the rest of these options down here, the HD60S, which is the external, which I had it, but I don't feel like pulling it out. The S Plus, which just came out, the Pro, which goes inside your PC, the 4K 60S Plus, the big brick, I think it's like $400. None of these support 120 at any resolution, which is what you need. So this, as of right now, is the only device that can capture or pass through 120 so that you can play Call of Duty on PS5 or whatever game at that high frame rate you want without compromising the stream. Because if you use the other ones, it's going to cap you at 60, and it's going to suck if you play on 120 and and you don't want to go back to 60, which is where I was at, which led me down this rabbit hole. The second thing is that if you're using an Elgato and you have an optical headset, at some point you might have realized that the PS5 does not have an optical headset, or optical port. So this is where this guy comes in. I don't know what, okay. So this thing has an optical port. Now the reason why I bring this thing up is because you can't just buy any of these. You have to buy, I found that this one has worked best for me. This one has 120 through hertz. It goes up to 4K, but you don't really need 4K. What you need is HDMI 2.0 ports. I think Astro has a Astro HD converter. Let me see. Astro HD converter. So Astro has one of these. I'm not 100% sure if it goes up to, if it supports 144 hertz pass through like this one does. But I know for a fact that this one does. The old one I had HDMI 1.4 slots, and because of that, I wasn't able to use it. I mean, I could use it, but I was capped at 60. But using this, I can get 120 through the Mark II and get 120 on my screen. So it's kind of elaborate. So I'll put a link to this down in the comment section, along with all the links to all the other websites and stuff I referenced. Well, most of them. The ones that mattered, specifically this one and the Elgato side, I guess. But yeah, so if you have an optical headset and you don't want to buy a USB headset for your new PS5, you can buy this, plug your optical port into this, run this out to your monitor. This is your PS5 port, and you will be able to continue using your PS4 headset on your PS5. And if you're streaming, then you would also use this because, I didn't mean to do that. Because again, you can't get 120, you can only get 120 hertz. I've only gotten 120 hertz through this box. There might be other options out there, but everything looked iffy. Nothing specifically said 2.0 except for this box right here. And I can confirm, I'm using it right now. I wish I could unplug and show you. I got the box. Here we go, the box right here. It's kind of backwards, probably hard to read, but this will give you 120 on your PS5. So again, I'll put that in the description, but that's all I had. All right, guys. So I forgot to show you what you do inside the 4K software, which this is what it is. It's a very slim, unique looking. But anyway, so if you have the 4K software, right, by default, it is not configured to allow 120 pass through. You have to hit this gear icon up here, right? I want to get this in really quick because I don't want to make a separate video. So by default, when you come in here, if you go to the device tab, input EDID mode is set to merged. All right. Internal does not work. I don't know why. So I'm going to show you guys really quick what happens here. If you set it, so by default it's set to merged. So right now I am on, let's see, screen and video. I am at 60 hertz. So if you have this setting turned on, and you try to start Cold War, it will not do the flicker animation that you might have saw earlier in the video, and it will not give me 120 hertz. So I'm just waiting for Call of Duty pop up here. So it's connecting, blah, blah, blah. I'll show you the setting. It'll say disabled, and then while it's doing that, I'm actually going to go and try to be, I wouldn't say multitask, but you know, I'll show you in two different places. So I started up Call of Duty, and I'm at 60 hertz, right? And if I go inside the Call of Duty game and hit settings, it says 120 hertz disabled, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the game, and then I'm going to go up here to settings, and under device, I switch the input to display and hit apply. Hit okay. It'll do this for a little bit here. Just bear with me. All right, let me make sure I don't need to share my PS5 version because I don't even have 4 installed. Okay, so now I'm going to click on PS5. It should now do the flicker here in a second. There it goes. All right, well, it's connecting to online services. Let's go check. Screen and video output. Now I'm back at 120. So I wanted to add this in really quick. I forgot to do it during the first recording, so I'm just gonna go back and edit this in. And then let's go back to Call of Duty just to make sure. Settings, and now it says enabled, which I know is kind of hard to see with that light, but it's there. It says enabled. And there you go. That's all it is. The one last thing I'll say is if you hit the gear icon, I've moved the bit rate up to 50 because HDMI 2.0, I want to say it caps out at 48 gigs. Let me control F really quick. I'll edit this in. 48 nothing. All right, let me check. All right. Okay, so quick edit here. So it says right here that it goes up to 18 gigabytes. I think I might be confusing it with HDMI 2.1, which goes up to 48. I'm pretty sure. And I think that's why I have it capped out at 50, just in case in the future. Yeah, there you go. That's all right there, 48. So I put it at 50, just so in the future, whenever I upgrade to like a 4K 120 monitor, it'll already be set and I won't have to go through the pain of remembering. So you just need this to be set at 18 at the minimum. Which is right here, output So set that to at least 18, probably 20 to give it some overhead. And then just make sure, again, under devices, the input is set to display, and then you will get your 120 pass through on the Mark II or the MK2. I keep saying, I guess M Mark is. Anyway, that's all I had for you guys. Have a good one. Sorry for any weird editing. I had to cut some stuff out because I was like losing my train of thought because I was doing all this stuff. So again, you don't need HDMI 2.1. Monitor with HDMI 2.0 support will get you 120. If you have an optical headset, you'll definitely want to get one of these so that you don't have to buy another headset for your PS5, because I'm using my PS4 Astro T40s and I've had these things for like a year now, so I don't want to pay another $100 on top of what I've already paid for the monitor and everything else. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them in the comment section below. Hopefully this helped you out. Have a good one. Peace.